Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is D.H. Thorne. As some of you are no doubt aware, I have been working on my latest grimoire, which is called Shadownomicon, Grimoire of the Shadow People. Hopefully you guys can see that good. If not, of course, I will put a picture up. It's a little dark, the cover, that was intentional. And the actual book will not have this stripe across the front. That's just to show it's a proof copy, that it's not for resale. Anyway, this grimoire is actually, in many ways, the reason I wrote Become the Maelstrom. I wanted to have a core fundamental book of magic already out, so that people who were interested in my work and might want to work with these entities would have some sort of at least a magical foundation that would be at least in keeping with the ideas in this book. It is therefore recommended that you already be familiar with Become the Maelstrom or have a well-developed practice of your own before you attempt any of the rituals out of this book. This is not very complicated ritual work. This is not something that's going to take you all day to perform a ritual, but it may take some preparation and some understanding of things like energy manipulation, trance states, things like that, that are not really meant for the novice. So this grimoire is meant for intermediate to advanced sorcerers, honestly. Now, originally, when I was first talking about this book and who it was going to be for, I think I was being a little overly concerned. See, when I was writing this book, I was, in my own way, not fully finished with my own path working with all of the entities and material that I was going to put in it. And in some ways, I was still dealing with certain, we'll say, non-integrated shadows of my own that I had to deal with and understand, so that I could understand that although it's not meant for beginners, you don't have to be afraid of these beings. In fact, it's probably the worst attitude you can possibly have. So although I do include warnings in here to be careful, it is not the most dangerous thing you could possibly do, like I was hinting at earlier. These entities, however, are not benevolent in the sense that people are used to. A lot of people have found, when working with so-called demons, like the goetic spirits, that those entities are apparently very interested in helping out with the ascension of people that they deem respectful, worthy, whatever. The average person who approaches them with a respectful attitude will get a very respectful attitude in return. They will be very, likely to reciprocate. And it's not that these beings won't respect, you, if you show them respect, but it is that they are not benevolent in the usual sense. They're a little bit more interested in feeding off of you most of the time. However, if you are properly prepared, if you have the right ritual method, if you have the right mindset, and you understand that these beings are meant to challenge you, they are part of you that you have hidden deep down inside yourself, and that they manifest in our world in these strange, shadowy beings that people see, usually out of the corner of their eye. This is a manifestation, at least in part, of our shadow. It's certainly not all of our Jungian shadow that is manifesting, but they have a deep connection to that shadow. In fact, probably the best way to put it would be that they feed off of our Jungian shadow, and that the energies of our Jungian shadow have a lot to do with where they come from. In other words, it's almost like the fertile soil or the food that they grow upon, the milk that they drink. It sort of fertilizes them, we'll say, as well. So they are rather adversarial towards people who do not have very well developed, integrated shadows. So in other words, if you have a really strong shadow self that you are unaware of, that you keep tucked down, you don't let people see, you kind of keep in denial about, that becomes something that they can use against you. And the more they do that, of course, it could destroy you, or you could become stronger for it. If you don't let it destroy you, you will become stronger, and you will reach synthesis that much quicker. A little tongue-tied there. For some reason, certain words sometimes get me. Anyway, so this book is about 260 pages long. It is, of course, black and white to keep the printing costs down, but there are plenty of visual aids. I'm going to show you just one or two towards the back here. Let me get one pulled up. There are plenty of illustrations. This should be a good one. The Hat Man, everybody's favorite. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see that clearly. That should do it. So there's plenty of illustrations like that throughout the book. It's got more illustrations by a long shot than Become the Maelstrom had. So there's a lot of material here to help inspire you visually. And it's divided up into two primary sections. The first is a section that is meant to help you align with the current of the Shadow People itself. This is going to contain a combination of things. For one thing, I go into a little bit of a search through history to find any evidence of what these entities might be in history. You know, it's sort of a common practice in modern occultism to look through all of our history texts and try to understand a spirit through the lens of the cultures that they originated in. So, for example, when we're trying to understand, Baal, I always go to Baal because he's the most obvious one. We go back to ancient Canaan and Babylon and Mesopotamia, and then we can go back to even Samaria and all these other places. And we'll find the origins of that entity. And we have a harder time doing that with Shadow People because up to this point, the Shadow People haven't really been very coherent in the mind of the conscious majority. In other words, the urban myth and urban legend of the Shadow People hasn't really been connected really directly with any spiritual entity. There's a lot of people saying it's this, it's that, it could be this, it could be that, and there's actually a lot of cultures that have potential explanations. But we have to understand that a lot of entities can show up and look like a shadow, but not actually be a shadow person. So there is a little bit of a difference. Now, I have found in my working with these entities a great deal about them. It's not going to match everybody's experience with them. I don't think that that's the point of work like this. This is my experiences with these entities. If you want to understand them the way I do, and potentially work with them the way that I do, and the way that I have in the past, then this is the book you're going to want. Now, what I have found, very, very interestingly, while working with these spirits, is also a method for increasing the potential for a really vivid experience with your, we'll say, channeling or conjuration of spirits. Some people don't like to use the word conjuration because that implies that you're forcing them. So we'll say with your spiritual communion with other entities. In working with these Shadow People and trying to figure out a way to maximize the chances of you having sort of a visceral, vivid, physical-ish manifestation with these entities, I have resurrected a little bit some of the practices that I used to have as a younger man, where I would just use a simple triangle as a portal and place myself in a position of, we'll say, an intermediate position between the material world and the astral, so to speak, so that my ritual space becomes a kind of gateway or bridge, actually better described as a bridge, where we can sort of mix the two realities and have sort of a pocket reality of our own for the duration of the ritual ceremony, so that we can actually have a higher potential for some kind of supernatural effect to take place. One of the ways I describe it in the book is that during the ritual, during the communion session, you might see and experience things that are wholly impossible. When it's done, when you're finished, it will be as if nothing strange happened at all, because it didn't actually happen exactly in the reality that the rest of the world experiences. So you may be in your ritual chamber and see things moving. You may see objects flying around. I mean, I've had this happen when I was younger. And as soon as you're done, it's almost like that never happened. You were hallucinating, but it's not just a hallucination. There's more to it. So I call this, this has a lot to do with what I call the veil. A lot of people have heard of this term. And of course, I discuss that at length in the book. And I will include an excerpt of part of the book discussing the veil at the end of this video, so that you can get a little bit out of that. So this book, like I said, has two parts. The first part is getting you aligned with the current of the shadows. So we're going to talk about history. We're going to be talking about the Art Bell Show. We're going to be talking about anything and everything that might point to what we today call a shadow person. Now, as I said before, a lot of other entities can appear to be like a shadow. So I don't want to just mix it all together and say anything that ever had to do with a shadow in a spiritual context is a shadow person, because that's not true. It just isn't. There's a lot of entities that will appear to you in your ceremonial magic. You know, you can conjure Lucifer, and although he is a spirit of light in a lot of people's eyes, he'll appear as a shadow to some other people. You may call upon King Paimon, and instead of him appearing in a bright light or a candle or a vision of a man riding on a dromedary camel, you might see just a shadow that says, "I am King Paimon." So just seeing a shadow is not enough. Okay, it's just not. There's definitely a vibe that goes with them. There's a sense of drain and we'll say anxiety and fear and something darker about them. And that's because they are draining you. They are energy vampires, okay? That is one of the fundamental things you have to understand about them, is that they are a form of energy vampire, and they are most keenly attuned to the negative and dark energies of humanity. So they will drain you through those conduits of your energy. They will try to make you unhappy and upset. They will try to make you scared, and they will try to feed off of you that way, unless you integrate your own shadow and become capable of dealing with them and not having any fear, not having a lot of vices that they can try to work on you with. If you are a fairly well integrated person, then they can become rather not submissive or subservient, but certainly more amicable to working with you and teaching you things. So this book sets up a pattern for you so that once you understand what they've done with me and to me, because that's another part of the book, is a testimonial of my own, which is actually a rather lengthy part of the book, where I describe my interactions with these going back to my childhood and ending where I am now, so that you can sort of understand the different ways that I've interacted with them and the different effects that they've had on me. You'll see that what began as some sort of kind of like an innocent interaction became rather abusive and dangerous. They were hurting me. They were causing me to do, not causing me, but I was doing bad things with their excuse. I was using them as an excuse to do things. And we came full circle, and now I understand what my role is meant to be and what their role in my life really was. As much as it hurt, they actually challenged me and did things to me that forced me to either sink or swim. So unlike a goetic spirit that might teach you, actually I shouldn't even say teach you the soft way, but my experience, the goetic spirits are more likely to just kind of give you more gentle and more polite ways of growth. These entities are more likely to shove it in your face and make you deal with it. So then there's going to be the second part of the book, and the second part of the book is all about the rituals and methods that you can use to work with these beings the way I do. Now, I want to warn you, I have not included everything in this book that I possibly could. The reason for that is they don't want me to. In fact, when I was writing this book, they would hit me with these intense sensations of being drained. Sleep apnea would be bothering me at night, so I couldn't sleep. And then the next day I'd go to write, and I'd have like a whole lot of narcolepsy if and only if I wrote things that they didn't want in the book. So they wanted me to keep things simple, and they wanted me to keep speculation to sort of a dull roar so that there was room for you guys to actually piece together the information and be interested in working with them. They wanted me to give you enough information so that you could reach out to them and get the rest. But I do include some specific details in there about certain things to show you that there's a lot more to come, that there's a lot more you can find out when you work with these beings. Now, I have identified a total of 8 individuated entities within the Shadow People current that you can interact with. Now, there's a lot more than that, okay? There's Shadow People everywhere if you know where to look, especially in places where there's a lot of dysfunction or tragedy. You can see them all over the place. Almost everybody has 1 or 2 of them floating around them at any given time if you know where to look. You don't always see them. You can't see them unless they are sort of in the right, we'll say, phase. But sometimes you can and sometimes you can't see them, but you can usually sense them. Some people you can tell that they're around and they're feeding off of them, they're influencing them, they're doing things to them to cause them to act a certain way. So this book will identify 8 specific spirits, 8 specific shadow people that are part of this greater Shadow People current. And the 2 most important, the 2 that I have actually names for rather than just sort of descriptions for, because the others don't really want to give their name to me, or at least they don't want me to talk about it. The 2 that I can talk to you about are Legion and Ronziel. Now, Legion is, the thing about Legion is, in the Bible there is a demon called Legion, and when I first encountered this shadow entity, okay, it used the line of the Bible. It says, I said, "Who are you? What are you?" It says, "We are Legion, for we are many. Call us Legion, for we are many." Literally a quote from the Bible, pretty much word for word. And I said, what is this? Am I actually talking to Legion from the Bible? And I had to do some research, and I had to work with Azazel, some other entities to untangle this web so I understood what I was dealing with here. And sure enough, it is most likely that this entity was the inspiration for that idea in the Bible. However, that event never actually happened in the Bible, according to the spirits I work with. So this being is the Legion from the Bible, but the Legion from the Bible isn't really the Legion from the Bible, okay? Essentially, this entity Legion is a kind of collective mind for all of the shadow current. All of the shadow people you've ever going to see or have seen are in some way attached or part of Legion itself. That is the overarching spirit, the kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, when you have a compound group of spirits that are all one entity that can kind of come together. That is what this is, like a quora of spirits, we'll say. Ranziel is actually a fallen watcher, and this is an entity. This is why Azazel was so deeply involved in my research. And of course, I will cover more about that, but not in too much detail, because again, they want you to find these things for yourself. But Ranziel is actually one of the fallen watchers that has a lot to do with mankind's development, and because of his actions was cast into the abyss where Legion is. Now, the abyss that we're talking about, I go into more detail, of course, in the book, but this is a place of pure darkness, cut off from all light. And that is why, most people may already see where I'm going with this, these entities appear as complete shadow. They are completely devoid of any kind of light from the archetypal sense, okay? And what happens is human minds, human senses, we understand that intuitively and instinctively when we see them. And so our minds create for us whatever image they need to have to see them. Now, interestingly enough, shadow people, as a general rule, are actually, in my opinion, one of the few spirits that actually manifests in a physical way that can be caught on film under the right situations, circumstances. It's rare as all hell, but it does seem to happen. If you look up videos on various things like YouTube and you just type in shadow people caught on film, you will occasionally see, some of them are obviously just not that. It's somebody's shadow and it's just a false report. Every once in a while, you're going to see one or two out there that's going to make you wonder, what is it that they're catching on film? Was it somebody else? Was it staged? What was that? That's the interesting thing about these entities, is that I do believe of all of the spiritual entities that we work with, even compared to the goetic spirits, the ancient gods, physical manifestations for these entities are more like what you would expect in a Hollywood film compared to other spirits, okay? That doesn't mean that the other ones don't ever manifest for you physically, but these seem to be, they just get caught on film a lot more, okay? That's just a matter of fact. You yourself may not necessarily see them. The interesting thing is most people, even people with developed senses, only see them out of the corners of their eyes and or their mind's eye. And I found that in meditation ritual and using the communion ritual, which I've created, you can actually get a very vivid impression. You can actually kind of see them sometimes with the naked eye. They might even appear before you. The way I have it set up, you may see shadows, okay, literally in front of you. It could happen. It's happened to me when I was younger. I haven't had it happen in a long time, but it has happened to me when I was younger. So I hope you guys are interested in this book. It is, again, it's a little bit more, we'll say, focused. Become the Maelstrom was more just a general book of magic. This is a book specifically dealing with the shadow people. And someone had asked me, well, what's the point of working with these spirits? Well, first and foremost, they are really, really good. In fact, the focus of this book is to guide you towards creating a relationship with them so that they can help you integrate your own Jungian shadow. Because part of the problem that we have as especially black magicians, we're often broken people. We're often, or at least we were, we're often misfits. We're eclectic. We have things about us, not that we're ashamed of, but that society makes us, hide from the world. And so we tend to push our own shadow pretty deep down inside of us. We have a lot of impulses we may not be aware of. So these entities are going to, if you approach them correctly, they are going to help you integrate a lot of that in your own life. And some of it's going to be adversarial in nature. They're not just going to be sweet about it and say, by the way, did you know you have a temper problem? No. They're going to bring your temper out, and they're going to bring it out in a way that's going to make you face it. So these are very difficult spirits to work with for the uninitiated, for people who do not understand their own spiritual and psycho connection that they need to make to become ascended. And one of the things that I've noticed, one of the things that I have learned along my journey is that the gods are always well-integrated entities. They are fully aware or don't care about their shadow. They don't have one in the same sense that we do. They're never really ashamed of themselves. If you really look in the various cultures, when was the last time a god was ashamed of anything it ever did? They make mistakes, they do things like that, and sometimes they feel sorrow and all that kind of stuff. But they never seem to be like ashamed. They don't have these hidden things that manipulate them about themselves. They don't have, usually only if there are, it's usually the demons that have that, the lower entities that don't have control, the ones that have, vices and tempers and things like that. So if you pay attention to this, you will find that working with these entities are a good way to integrate your own shadow and thus improve the ability you will have to ascend more easily in this lifetime. Now, beyond that, once you make a connection and initiate yourself with these spirits, assuming you do that successfully, as part of that process, you can gain a great deal of magical knowledge. You can gain, obviously they'll give you ideas for spells and things like that. I don't care as much about that. I'm more interested in potentials or learning concepts of magic. That's more like what I'm into. These spirits will teach you a lot about vampiric magic, a lot about baneful magic, and things of that nature. So they're very useful for that. And they themselves, especially the 8 that I have identified for you, are exquisitely good to use to attack people. They're very good for baneful work because you can send one of these entities, and they are all very much, corresponding to various sins or darknesses about the human nature. So you have rage, you have lust, you have, narcissistic parents, you have these kind of things. These are visceral and real things in the human condition. You can send these spirits to go inflict that on other people, okay? People that are in your way, people that you need to have maybe even mature because of it, because these entities don't necessarily kill, okay? They're not always used to kill, but they do get the job done one way or the other. So you can send them to, one way or the other, their shadow is going to either destroy them or fix them. And either way, you win if you do this correctly. So that's also a very useful part of this. Anyway, guys, I'm going to give you guys a audio excerpt from the book coming up next. I hope you guys find this really interesting and useful. This book should be out at the time of this video being up. And once again, it's called Shadownomicon. The link will be in the description where you can purchase this. It's 260 pages, 6x9, about 60,000 words. It's a labor of love, guys, and I hope you like it. Thanks. The Veil. A common concept in occult magical traditions is the concept of the veil. This veil has many different, often dogmatic or superstitious explanations, but I will forego trying to list or explain them all and stick with my own more fundamental explanation. The veil is this concept that there is this kind of tenuous or even porous membrane that separates one kind of reality, for example, the material world, the waking world, from another, the spiritual, the dream, or one realm, for example, heaven or astral, from another, hell or abyss. In Become the Maelstrom, I go to some length to describe the relationship of the material from the astral and the illusory division between the other aspects of reality. That our minds are the final arbiter of reality as it stands, that our perception of reality is an entirely internal one, and while there is no proof or refutation of an external world, everything we know about it is a product of our internal processes. This can, of course, turn into an unhealthy, solipsistic perspective of reality, but it can also become a powerful tool. What we believe is what is, and it is by shifting our awareness, or the assemblage point, as someone like Carlos Castaneda might put it, that we can shift reality. We can go from one of pure mentalism and mechanical skepticism to one of spirit and wonder and open possibilities. It is in this way that we learn that the veil is not really a division, rather an ever-shifting reference point. Here be dragons, territory of the unseen, the unknowable, the distant past and the far future that is always moving from one place to another as we shift our attention and awareness. I had the great fortune of being both a deep mystic and a nihilistic skeptic over the course of my life. Without this experience, I would not find it so easy to intentionally shift from one kind of awareness to another. I can look at a situation from both sides and, by choice, convince myself to believe one way or the other. Today, I am a skeptic, and magic is all psychology. Tomorrow, I am a demonologer, and I work with spirits to get what I want. The next, I am a Zen monk or a yogi, and other days I'm an author of fiction that describes worlds I, quote-unquote, imagined while astral projecting. This can be a wild ride, confusing at first, but a useful one. And in each transition I must penetrate or at least come very close to the veil. Indeed, the very imagery of a veil implies that it is a very fragile and pliable thing, almost meaningless as a boundary or a border. The veil is not really a noun, but more of a verb, an adjective, a state of awareness and intentional mind action. The veil is thought to be something that can be symbolically, metaphorically pierced, opened, cut, or made thin, that it normally allows only limited indirect interaction, or none at all, between the things we keep apart. What this essentially means is that as mankind shifts our awareness through the various means, for example, stimuluses, drugs, meditation, and sleep, the veil can be penetrated, and our relationship to it can change. We can teleport from one side of the veil to the other just by sleeping, for example. In my own practice, the veil is not a physical or even really an astral construct. Even if I see it in a ritual as a physical or astral object in some way, I personally see that only as merely a symbol of the veil to give my mind something to work with, an excuse to role-play a change in perception, to allow my analytical mind an easy escape so when rational explanations fail, I can move effortlessly into the realm of spirit and leave my skeptical mind to focus on how to report things after. The veil itself is not its symbolic representation any more than you are your name. As I keep hinting at, the best example is the waking dream, your everyday life, versus the sleeping dream, where you go when you sleep. There is a veil between the two which creates an illusion of separation between them. Both experiences are dreams. It is just that when we are awake, we think we are the waking dream. We think the waking dream is the real dream. And when we sleep, we also think the sleeping dream is the real dream. Which leads to all the questions of what does it truly mean to be awake at all? Because in our deep dream state, we surely know we are awake then too. It is the lucid dream which ties it all together, when we can, even for a moment, transcend the wake-asleep paradigm and stand on both sides of the veil at the same time. And this is the perfect metaphor of rending the veil, a lucid moment when we are our true self, experiencing reality as a dream that we are fully conscious of and not lost within. The veil is then a way for our mind to compartmentalize these different experiences into a day-to-day world and a night world, and an inner world and an external world, and a material world from a spiritual world, and a light world from a dark world. And this is the veil we must learn to bypass and tear a hole into to maximize our interaction with the shadow people. We need to tear a hole in the veil so that the abyss and the light can penetrate one another. We need to allow the hidden darkness to come to the light and the light to pour into the darkness. We need to make a bridge so that the self and the shadows can interact in a metaphysical space that is hospitable to both. This kind of operation is applicable to virtually any kind of magic. After learning the basics of sigils and trances, it is the next level of spirit calling ritual. Because many occultists bang their head against the idea of invocation and physical evocation to the point of absurdity. For example, how do you make a spirit manifest physically? How do you know it's real? Silly mortal. Why not make a bridge? Make a place where you meet each other halfway. And in this space, anything may happen. In this space, you may indeed be able to reach out and touch the spirit and feel its hand on yours. You may indeed see things flying off shelves and around your ritual space. And when the ritual is done, and when the ritual is done, it will be as if nothing ever happened. The things will remain on your shelves, the dust undisturbed. but you will know what you saw was real. We will be doing this ritual, and your results will depend entirely on your own ability to shift your awareness to this bridge and rift in the veil. We will be using certain symbolism and metaphor. We will be performing certain actions which, when done with deep intent and determination, and done in deep trance in the right attitude and expectation, will cause you to have one of those oh shit moments, and it will become a tool that you can take with you and use in any and all magic going forward. You can easily modify these concepts to work in and with other kinds of spiritual or astral realities. You can go into your ritual space and literally stand on the threshold between the infernal realms and the mortal world and smell the brimstone, and feel the flame and commune with the denizens of this world. For now, we will be focusing on using this technique for the shadow current. You will find that there is, of course, more than a little similarity to the kinds of ideas found in the Goetia and the Lesser Keys of Solomon. The use of the triangle, for example. In this case, it is not a prison, but a gate. Truly, there is nothing under the sun, but how we apply our craft can create whole new worlds.